Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. The project I'm going to do today, as I said before, I don't normally do life-size flowers, but today I am going to do lilies, which I've been asked to do for a friend of mine for a cake for one of her customers. Have done lilies before on this channel, but they were put into a spray. They were the small ones that mixed in with the roses. So I'm going to show you something that's a little bit more detail in it than the smaller ones. So I'll take you down to my board now. Right, so the cutters I'm going to use, anybody that's bought cutters before will know that you can get the lily cutters in different sizes. This is the largest set out of the big ones. I'm just looking to see if I've got a small one here. I can show you out the small set. No, I haven't got one there. The small set's about that big, and then there's a medium one, and then the larger one. Same as there are with some of the lily cutters, particularly the Cymbidium. Orchid cutters. Cymbidium orchid is one of the examples where they do three different sizes in them. So I'm just going to pop those to one side. Now I've been asked to do these in a cream colour. So what I've done is I've coloured some flower paste here with ivory from Sugar Flare. Wilton do one the same colour as well. That's quite good. Normally I put a little bit less in for doing on cakes, but if you're doing an ivory cake, it matches up quite well with ivory sugar paste, flour sugar paste for your cakes. So if you work your paste to soften it up as the same way as we normally do, and then I'm going to put a bit white fat on my board. So I'm using Trex here. Whatever is available in your area, you want the white vegetable fat. So start rolling your paste out. You don't want to go too thin with this, because things like orchids and lilies are quite fleshy flowers, so it doesn't want to be as thin as it is when you do things like rose petals and like I did with the I've forgotten what I've done. Quite a lot of the other flowers that I've done anyway. You'll find a lot of them on my channel, the ones that I've done. So I'm not going to go too thin. But I'm going to use my ridge rolling pin, so always stop to allow yourself so your paste is thick enough when you've done rolled out your groove. So I'm going to roll out the groove up the centre of my paste. If you haven't got one of these groove rolling pins, then if you've got a cell board like I've got here with the grooves on the other side, use the grooves on there. You just have to probably cut out one petal at a time. So I'm going to cut out one of each rather than doing loads of them, but you will need 3 wide petals and 3 narrow petals. I'm just going to do one of each because I've already got all mine dried. So take your paste away. Don't forget, people, if you've got any questions about anything, leave your questions in the down below the video. And if you've got any suggestions of anything that you'd like to see me do, then please leave that in the comments as well. Right, I'm going to use a 26 gauge wire for this, a white wire. Whenever you're doing petals, always use white wires. That feels a bit thin. That feels better. And what I do with these is I cut the wires into 3 for these, because it's quite a big petal. You need a bit more. If you're doing smaller ones, you can cut them into 4 and just use 1/4 of a wire. But I'm just going to use 1/3 of a wire here. That's 1. Another 2 there. Like always, when you're doing separately wide petals and leaves and things like that, get it on your first finger, between your finger and your thumb, so you can feel the wire going up it, and twist it in to the bottom of your paste, and then just gently, a little bit at a time, get your wire to go up your paste so you can feel it where it is between your finger and your thumb. Now you need to go quite far up to your petal. As I've explained before in previous videos, I've gone up to there with that. The reason for that is if you do break a petal or anything like that, it's a lot easier to repair it if your wire's gone far enough up, and you don't want your wire to be showing anywhere on your petal. So again, we're going to do the same thing with the narrow petal. Now, unlike some of the lilies, you can use two different veiners, one for your narrow petals and one for your wide petals. Depends what you're doing and how much detail you want to put in. If you're doing a competition, then get hold of the lily you're going to do. It depends on whether it's going to be a Casablanca, an Oriental lily, or Stargazer lily. They all come in loads of different colours. Casablanca lilies are generally white. And then you've got your longiflorum lilies, which are a different cutter again to these and done in a different way. I'll probably do that at a later point when I find where I've put my cutters. Right, so once you've got your wires up your petal, then we need to thin the edges as usual. For this lily, I'm only going to use one veiner. The veiner that I'm using here is this one, which is from Diamond Paste Moulds. I've had this a lot of years. I have got various different moulds from different people, so it depends on how you want your lily to be as to which veiner you want to use. But if you are doing a competition, then make sure you study the flower first to find out which are the right ones to use. If you're not, it doesn't matter. If you've only got one veiner, that's fine. Nobody's going to be able to tell the difference. So thin your edges. If you're doing cold porcelain, don't forget, rather than pushing your ball tool around the edge, then you roll it like this on porcelain, because if you try pushing it round on porcelain, it doesn't work, it tears. So you just go around the edge of your petal like that. I haven't worked with cold porcelain on my videos, but some people do. I've noticed on some of the groups only tend to work in porcelain, so slightly different way of thinning your edges for anything like that. Right, so I'm just going to pop that to one side. Then I'm going to get my veiner, keeping the wide point towards you, and then putting your petal in to the centre like that. I'm not sure which way around is which. That's the back, so that wants to be that way. They're slightly different than some of the other like leaf veiners and that, where you've got a raised side on one side and an indentation up the centre of the with your veining on the other side. With lilies, you tend to find that you've got these sort of effects on your petals with the veiners, depending on which veiner you're using. Just move that over there, put that in, good press. There we are, so that's the front and that's the back. Right, so the next thing you need to do then, and I've got a load of other flowers on here that I've done previously, you need to get your petals onto your foam. Now don't forget to round the bottom of your petals here, so that they'll go around the ovary on the centre of your lily. I've done it this way because the petals can be drying while you're doing the rest of it. So curve that round like that, and then that goes in between your foam like that, and you can curve your top part back, and then do the same thing with the wider petals. So again, I'm going to cup that up around the bottom so that that shapes around the ovary when we put it together, and then put that into there like that, and curve your back of your petal back. like that. Doesn't matter if you've got a bit of wavy edges on. I'll just show you one of my dried ones. Some of these have dried with a bit of a wavy edge on them, so you can see that you've got different shapes in them. They don't dry straight. If you dry things flat or straight as they are in nature, they don't look realistic, so sometimes you have to give a bit more movement into them than the flower would normally have. Just pop that over there, out of the way, get rid of that. Now then, the stamens, I've put a bit more detail in than I have on my other videos, because they have got this sort of rounded top on them, so I'm going to show you how to do that first. Normally I would let them dry before I do the pollen on them, but I'm going to do it all in one go this time. So you want some thin wire, 28 gauge wire. Have I got any on here? No, I'll have to get thin wire out. You could use either a 30, I'm going to use a 32 gauge wire for this. It doesn't need to be thick wire. You could use either a 30 or a 32. And again, I don't want them to be too short, whereas normally I cut it into about 6 if I was doing the smaller lilies, but because I'm doing bigger ones, I'm just going to cut this into 4. So I've cut that in half, and then cut that in half again, like that. Now if you're doing a few of them, the best thing to do with this, to do your T-bar, if you get all your tops all straightened up like that, so you've got them all level, get a few of them between your finger and your thumb. Oh, I've got another wire down there, I've missed one. Bring that one up because that's a little bit shorter than the others. There we are. So I've got them between my finger and thumb like that. Just turn it on the side. I'm going to bend it this way, and then I'm going to get it about 3/4 of the way along and bend it back the other way. So we've got what you call a T-bar. So if I just get one of them out and I'll just squash that together like that. I'll put it on my hand so you can see it. You've got this sort of like a, I don't know whether you can see that or not, a T-bar shape. Like that. So I'm going to use the same paste that I've used before. You could use white paste for this if you wanted to, but if you use the cream paste, then if you miss a little bit of your pollen on it or anything like that, then you can still see it. So you only want a tiny little bit of paste for this. So I'm talking about the size of a small druggie. Roll it into a ball and roll it and thin it on both sides like that, so you've got a bit of a torpedo shape. Pop that down on your board. Then you want your glue, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the wire and I'm going to pop it straight into the glue like that, then pop that into the paste like that. Then if you just make sure that that's nice and secure on your paste, and then just give it a bit of shape so it's a bit rounded over the top like that, and then you can set those to one side to dry. Now I'm not going to do any more of those because I've already got a load of them made up. I should have left one without the pollen on to show you, but I didn't. So here I've got some pollen that I've coloured brown now. For anybody who hasn't watched my videos before, I make my own pollen, and the way that I make it is by getting some ground rice or semolina, either will do. Needs to be quite fine. Pop it into a pot, some powder colour, whatever colour you're wanting to use into your pot, give it a good shake, and you've got your pollen. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get that stamen that I've just made, if I can fit, no, that might not go into there. I'm going to do it with my brush, just to be on the safe side so it doesn't drop into my glue. It's not, as I say, normally I'd let this dry. I'm going to glue it all over, underneath as well, like that. Oops, don't knock your glue over like I've just done. If that had been full, it would have been all over. Picked a hair up there off something. Right, I'm just going to get it so it's quite deep, and then I'm going to go into my pollen like that, then just tap that off so you've got your pollen all over the top. Then pop that to one side to dry. I'm going to pop that in a separate place because I don't want to mix it up with the dry ones that I've already got made. Right, so once you've done that, now you want the centre of the lily, which is this part, the column. So I'm going to use some white paste for this because that's going to be dusted a green colour. This paste is a little bit dry, so if it gets a bit crusty like this, like mine's done, don't throw it away. I've probably shown you this before. Get it on your board and roll it out and crush it out. Sometimes when it's been out a while, because I haven't done a video for a couple of weeks, so my paste has dried out a little bit there. Just give it a roll like that, then re-knead it, and your paste is back to where it should be. Like that. Okay, right, the next thing we need to do now is we need to put the centre onto a wire. So I've got a 20 gauge wire here. You can use either a white or a green one because it's going to be taped over anyway, but I've got a green wire here. So I'm going to get a piece of the white paste, roll that into a ball. Then I'm going to roll that into a bit of a sausage, like that. Now, depending on what paste you're using, I've mentioned this before, with some flour pastes are not as sticky as others. Mine's quite sticky, so I don't need any glue on mine. But if you have problems with leaves and petals coming off of wires, it's because your paste isn't sticky enough. So in that case, with that kind of paste, put some glue on your wire. Don't overdo it, it just wants to be sticky enough so that it sticks to your paste. Then I'm going to pop the wire through it like that with a little bit showing at the end, and then I'm going to start rolling, because as you roll it's going to come up your wire past the end of it like that. Now we need this to be quite thin. You don't want these thick stubby type centres in your lilies. There's quite a lot past there, so some of that I'm going to take off. I'm going to leave a bit on because I need a little bit at the top there to form the anther cap. Just thin that down at the bottom. A little bit untidy there, so I'm just going to take a little bit of that off and thin that down again. Now this is where you need to measure it in your one of your cutters. So it wants to come probably no more than 2/3 up your cutter, like that. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make the anther cap now, because I've got a bit of spare off the top there. If you just see that's wobbling about there, I'm going to get it between my finger and thumb, and I'm going to press that down like that, and just go around with your fingers underneath just to make sure that it goes in underneath your anther cap. If it goes a little bit thicker down there, just give it a roll, but make sure you get your anther cap past the end of your hand so you're not going to squash it again. And then I need a pair of tweezers. should have had them out on here and I can't see them, so if you just bear with me a second while I find where I've put my tweezers. Like everything else, it'd be right under my nose when I find it. I'm always losing things. We put it down to age, but it happens to the best of us. No, that's not it. Just going to switch off a minute while I find them. Right, I'm back. I've got my tweezers. They weren't where I was looking for them, but that's typical of me anyway. So what you need to do now is you need to divide the top, the anti-cap, into 3. So if you get your tweezers in and you pinch, so for you in the UK it's the shape of the emblem of the Isle of Man. You're forming sort of like 3 triangles on the top there. I'm just going to give that a little bit of a thin down underneath the anti-cap again. So then we need to put that to one side to dry. Now the next bit we're going to do for that, before we finish that off, I'm going to make the ovary at the base of the column. So that's it, this bit here. This is where the seeds are in the in lilies. So again, I need a small ball of paste. About the size of a garden pea. And then I'm going to get the column and I'm going to put some glue just at the base of the column here. Like that. And then wire through the centre of your ball of paste and pull that up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to shape that now so that it's basically a bit more oval. So we want that piece to stick to the glued part on your wire at the base of your column. Like that. And then if you get your cutting wheel, and we need to divide this into 6 now. This is where your stamens are going to sit. So if you start off with on one side and put a groove in one side, and what I do is I turn it over so that that groove is on my finger there, and then go up the other side. So you've divided it into half, and then what you need to do then is the piece in between, divide that into 2 again. Turn it over, divide that into 2, like that. Right, so what we need to do now is when you've done that, set that to one side to dry. Just get rid of that paste. Now those are all your bits and pieces, so you should have 6 wide petals, 6 narrow petals, and 6 stamens, and your column for the centre with the anti-cap and the ovary at the bottom. I'm just going to give my board a wipe because I've picked up some dust on there from my pollen. I was doing that. Otherwise it gets on everything and it stains because you've still got the powder in there. Right, so now there's 2 ways of putting your lily together. If you want to do a lily that's sort of partially open, like this one here that I've done, the petals are still a bit soft on the side here. What I've done is I've taped all the centre together, then I've put the 3 wide petals in, and then I've cut out the narrow petals separately and glued them onto the back of the wide petals. For this, because I'm doing a spray, I don't want them all to be exactly the same, so that's why I've done with that. But I'm going to get on to the colouring part of it now. So we want some kitchen roll. One thing that I didn't miss, I have made a bud for this as well. This is a bud for the lily. Now, all I've done with that, I'll go take you through that first as well. So if you do want to put any buds in your spray, have I got a spare wire on there? No, I haven't. I'll have to get another one out. So for the bud, I've used a 20 gauge wire, the same as I've done for the centre of the lily. In fact, actually you could use a thinner one. That's probably a bit too thick. If I use a 22 gauge wire. Doesn't need to, it is quite weighty because it's all paste really, because it's solid paste is that. So again, I'm going to cut that into 3. I'm only going to cut one piece off. I'll just pop that in that foam over there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a hook on the top, same as you would if you would when you're doing your rose cones. So that's onto there. And again, I'm going to use the same colour as the petals. I don't like to do the buds too big because they can look a bit clumsy if you do them too big. So it's probably better to do them a little bit smaller than too big. So what you need to do is to knead your paste and make sure you get all your creases out of it. Roll it into a ball. Apparently if you roll anti-clockwise, it's supposed to get rid of all the cracks and creases, which it hasn't done on that. Looking better. Right, and then I'm going to roll that into a bit of a cone. Oops. Put my wire into it. And pull that down inside so that anchors in. And then I'm going to roll the top part of the bud to make that a little bit slimmer. But I'm not rolling it completely into a cone because I don't want it to be too cone shaped. Now the tool I'm going to use for this, I haven't used before in any of my videos, it's not something that I use very often, is this one from Gem. And it's got a cone on one side, and then on this side, you probably won't be able to see this on camera or not, it's got like a groove down the centre of it there with 2 sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put like a double channel down. So if you start at the top and then rock it down and then join it again like that, so you get like a double line down it. Then I'm going to turn that round and then I'm going to do that again down there and down there. This one's a little bit lopsided, so I'm not going to actually use this one. I'm just doing this to show you because, as I say, I've already got one dry. So you can see that on the dried one there. Okay, so that's how to make the bud. Also as well, in the top of the bud as well, before I finish that, if you get your cone bit and just make a little sort of indentation into the top of the bud as well. They seem to have this sort of little indentation, at least the ones in my garden have anyway. Right, so colouring. Now the brief for this particular lily is a cream lily, and it's going to have some gold on. So whether it's for a golden wedding or not, I don't know. She was talking about touching the edge up. So what I've done to give her a head start, I've dusted the cream lilies with a colour called Golden Pearl from Edible Art. And what it is, it's a creamy colour, and it's got specks of gold in it, which I think looks really nice. So I'm just going to get the ones that I've already dried over off of my foam mat here. Now I think I've already dusted these. Yes, I have. I've dusted them, some of them with the golden pearl, but I'm just going to go over one of them to show you how I did it for anybody that hasn't seen it being done before. So I'm using one of the dusting brushes, which are quite wide and quite flat. They need to be firm enough to hold the powder, but soft enough not to damage your petals. So all I've done is just dusted all the way over with the golden pearl on the front and on the back, like that. Okay, so the next step I'm going to do is, and I would do this with all of my lilies, I'm going to add a little bit of green. So for that I'm using my tropical lime. Although on some lilies it can be a little bit darker, I don't want to go too heavy with the green because it can spoil the whole look of your flower. It can look too much. So I tend to go lighter rather than dark. And on here I've got a brush somewhere that I've used for my green. Have I put it away? It is here somewhere. I'll find what I've done with it. I put it in there. There it is. That's the one I used. Right. So a bit of the lime green. Always happens to me whenever I can't find anything. It's usually there, right, staring me in the face. So what I'm going to do is at the top end, tip of the petals, I'm just going to give it a little bit of green there, and right at the base of the petals. Again, at the top, on the back and the bottom. And then get the brush sideways with your narrow part down, and then just go down the back in a stripe. Like that. And do that on each of your petals. So I'll just quickly go over these. I'm not putting any other detail on these. I've missed the pearl on that one for some reason. Where's my pearl gone? There it is. Oh, I've got some on there. I've missed the back of one. There we are. Just check the other one, make sure I've done that. Yes, I've done that one. And then sideways down the back, just gently. It just wants to be very faint. You don't want to go too heavy with it. Turn it over. And sideways down the back. Like that. Right, that's the wide ones done. And then do the same thing on the narrow ones. The reason why we put the stripe of green down the back, just in case you're wondering, I can hear mine sticking over, even though you're not watching it until I've uploaded it. That part would form the outer part of your bud before it starts turning the colour that it is. But I'll come on to the bud in a bit because I'll come back to that one. Again, top and bottom, front and back. And the last one. Don't forget, when you've made your flowers, I haven't done it in all of my videos, but on some of them I have, don't forget to steam your flowers. If you're making a spray, sometimes it's easier to steam the whole spray rather than steaming individual flowers. It just saves an awful lot of time. and you've got something more substantial to hang on to depending on how big your spray is. But that sets your colour. And also with a lot of flowers like orchids and lilies and things like that, they can look quite waxy, so that gives you that sort of look on your petals. It takes that dried look off. So I'm just going to dust the top of the bud now with some of this green. And the bottom. And I'm just going to give that a bit of a waft over with the there's a brush gone there, with the golden ivory, just on the bit where I've got no green. So yeah, can you see the colour shows up? It'll show up even more when I steam it, but that just gives you an idea of what it looks like. Right, so I'm just going to pop that to one side. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to colour the centre of the lily and the stamens. So I need 6 stamens now. Although I've put the pollen at the top, we'll still need some green on the stamen stems. I've got 5 there, 6. I've got a load of spare ones here. I've done more than I need, so I've got ample there. So again, with the lime green, I'm just going to go in and then just go down the wire like that. Now the first one, I'm going to turn that over, and if you put your next stamens in the same spot, it should colour both sides of the wire. So if you put that on top of where I've dusted the green, that colour that's already on there should, no, it hasn't transferred as much as I wanted it to, so just give it a waft over. So you can see the difference between the ones that are white and the ones that are green. If you put them on green wires, the green is too dark for what we're doing, because when I come to tape it together I'm using Nile green, so that sort of tones in with all the green that I've used on the edge of petals and the stamens and the centre, the column. That was not too bad. The colour has transferred a bit on that one. Sometimes you find when you've dusted 1 or 2 stamens it will transfer and you don't have to turn them over. That's alright. While I'm doing this, people, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It's free to subscribe. And again, if you've got any comments about anything or any questions, or you want to know what kind of paste I've used or anything like that at all, then please do get in touch. And if you've got any suggestions, that's even better for something you'd like to see. I've had 1 or 2 people that have made suggestions, and I've fitted those videos in, but I'm waiting for some more suggestions at the moment. So don't forget, don't be shy. Right, so once I've done that, then the next thing to do is to do the column. Which one's that? That's the soft one. That's the dry one. Make sure we get the right one. So again, I'm going to use the, I'll just put that away as well, I needed that. You could, as I say, you could use a darker green if you want, but because I'm doing cream ones, I want to keep everything quite light, so I've gone for the light green. But you could use a darker green if you wanted to. And dust it all over with the green. On some of the lilies I've done, particularly coloured ones, that I have used a darker green. But it's up to you. Just have a look at the lilies in your garden or in your florist or anywhere that you can get hold of them, your supermarket or whatever. Or even treat yourself to a bunch to copy them. Right, so I've done all that green. So the next thing I'm going to do is, now I've got a brush here that I've used for a burgundy. I'm not going to put any more colour on it because there's enough colour on the top of that. And I'm just going to go over the top of the anther cap with it. You could do it a little bit darker, but I'm trying to keep everything delicate with this. So there, we've got that on the top there. Right, so once we've done that, we can start assembling then. So I'm just going to get some green tape. Excuse my voice while I'm turning round. So I've got some now green tape, which is the lighter florist tape. And I'm going to start that off underneath the column. And I'm going to push that up so it's right underneath the anther cap, there, like that. And then start adding in your stamens. Now when you put them in, when you size them up, get it so that the anther cap just fits just underneath the anther cap there. Right, so that goes in that position. It will come a little bit lower down when it comes out. As you can see, it's come out. They're like umbrella spokes, they spay out. So if you just get each of your stamens, get it just below the anther cap, there, that's it, and then tape them in. Doesn't matter where they fall at this point until you've got them all taped in, then you can adjust where you want them to be. It's just a matter of getting them all at the right height at this point. Don't worry about how far they've splayed out. I mean, you can try and get them to fit into the grooves, but it's a lot of fiddling about. It's a lot easier to get them taped in and then worry about what's going to sit where. So you can pull your wires about then. There we are. There's one more to go in. Thing is, if you put them into a groove, then they don't always stay where you put them, so you still have to move them around. Then tape down. I always find it's better to tape down in between like this, because then when you start adding your petals in and that, they grip a lot better if you've taped down. So once you've done that, then you can adjust where you want your stamens to go, and you can pull them in then so that they're a bit closer in into your centre like that. So basically they're like umbrella spokes in the flower. So once you've got that in, then you can start adding your petals in then. So start your tape off again underneath the anther cap and put in the wide petals first. You always put the wide petals in first. I don't know why nature does it, but that's just the way that they are. And you put those three in, bend your wires back and pop your petals in. You can adjust how you want your petals to sit once you've got them taped in. Now the next thing that I need to do now is I need to pull those wires down and make sure those are really tight in so that they stay where I want them to be, and then you can tape down. I can adjust them into position once I've got them taped down. Now they are moving around a little bit, but that's because I haven't got the narrow ones in yet. Once we get the back petals in, they'll stay in position a lot better. So you can adjust these now to where you want them to be. like that. And then start your tape off again underneath the base again. And put your narrow petals in. Each of the narrow petals go behind the join of two of your wide petals there, like that. A lot of these flowers, when you're assembling them, they're more or less self-explanatory. You can see how they go. Just lift that up a bit. And as long as you've curved your bottom of your petals at the base like I showed you, then they should fit together nicely. And that goes into there, like that. Now again, this is wire tape down so you can see where your wires are. Go in and pull your wires down from underneath like this. I hope I haven't gone out of shot again. I apologise if I have. It's very difficult for me to watch the camera and watch what I'm doing at the same time. I just realised I should have been looking and I wasn't. So you stretch with your right hand, twist with your left, or vice versa if you're left-handed. Then you can pull your petals up together like that. So that's your flower. One of the stamens has moved, so you can get in, you can adjust those as you want them. If you can try and get your stamens so you've got a stamen in the centre of the petal that you want it to be in. That wants to come round there. Like that. I've got some pollen on there. So that's the lily put together. Now I don't know whether I can put this into a spray because I'll have to have a look at this other one because I wanted to put this, see how this one's stiffened up. It's not completely dry yet. So I'm going to attempt to put this into a spray now. So I'm just going to pop that to one side for a minute. Let's get rid of these out of the way. Get rid of all my colours. And what I've done is I've done some variegated ivy here to put into this spray. Now if you want to know how I've made variegated ivy, I have got a video on that, so I'll put the link below, so that will take you on to the variegated ivy. The only difference between this and the one in the video that I've done is that I did this one with a light green paste and the other one I did with the cream paste with the green on, because there are different varieties, anything from a sort of creamy white colour background to a pale green in the variegated ivy. So you can go and have a look at that video. They're just the same, it's just the difference of the colour that you start with when you're making your paste. So I'm just going to get rid of these out of the way. I don't always put things into a spray, but it's nice to see a spray being done. So I'm going to use the same colour because that's the same colour as the stems that I've done. And I'm going to use full width tape for this. If you're doing a spray, full tape width is better because it's more secure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by starting the tape off on my ivy. I have used a darker green for the ivy, but that doesn't matter because it's not going to be part of the step. It's just to put the spray together. So I'm going to start off by putting the bud in there. So I'm just going to bend that up like that. And I'm going to tape down a little way so that that stays in place. Like that. I can adjust that around then, put the leaves behind it, like that. Then I'll start the tape off again just underneath the bud. I'm just going to move the camera up a little bit just in case so I don't go out of shot again. Means I can get more comfortable while I'm doing it. And I'm going to put in the partially closed lily first. I shall just have to keep an eye on this one when I've put the spray together to make sure that the petals don't flop too much while I'm doing this. And I'm going to tape down with this because they are quite heavy, these, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the bud out to one side so it can be seen, and then the lily, the part open lily, in the front like that. Then I'm going to start my tape off again underneath that lily. And then I'm going to put in a fully opened lily. I'm going to put that in behind, slightly to one side. Once you've got this taped in, you can adjust where you want your flowers to be. You need to keep your tape really tight. Sometimes you have to go in and just go over it a little bit with a bit more. I'm just going to do that here now. I'm going to put a bit more in here just to make sure that that's nice and secure. And then when I adjust where I want the lily to be, it should stay where I want it to be. Don't be frightened of using too much tape, because wants to go down there. That's going to come up here. No, it's still not tight enough, isn't that? I'm going to do that again just to make it secure. Smaller flowers are easier to handle because you don't have big petals that are very easily broken off if you're not careful. Right, so that's into there like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the third lily in behind those, and that'll fill in that gap in the middle there. Again, bend that up like that and pop that in there. Just in case you heard a little squeak there, that's my cat at the side of me telling me he wants feeding. Right, so there we are. So that's my lily spray. Just bring that down a bit more like that so you can see it. I hope you've enjoyed the video anyway, and you come back and see me for the next videos. And Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Yet again, I know I'm repeating myself, and leave any suggestions below. I will put a link below to the variegated ivy, and I might put a link into the other lilies that I did, the smaller ones, where I did a spray with some roses with that one. So there we have it. Anyway, take care, stay safe, see you soon, and don't forget to leave suggestions below.